a paper that is printed and distributed usually daily or weekly and contains news, articles of opinion, features, and advertising. We proudly present to you 150 years of the Savannah Tribune. They say Savannah moves slow, like the tide, like the drawl in your grandmother's warning, like the hush of moss whispering secrets to the live oaks. But slow doesn't mean silent, and it sure doesn't mean forgotten. This is a city built on contradictions, beauty and blood, gospel and grit, joy pressed between bricks laid by hands that were never paid. If you look close enough, you'll see us. Black Savannah, etched into every cobblestone, every rhythm, every Sunday shout from the pews of the First African Baptist to the laughter echoing from porches in Kyler Brownville. We've been here, carved out a life from cotton dust and Spanish moss. We birthed poets and preachers, midwives and marchers. We kept singing even when nobody was listening. And when they wrote us out the story, 3 men were courageous enough to write us in. Just know that this isn't just a place. It's a testimony, a living, breathing testament to survival, to pride, to love that stretches back generations.
My name is Shirley Barber James, and I am publisher of the Savannah Tribune.
Welcome to Savannah. Not the one on postcards, but the real one.
It's important to have papers that are owned by African Americans because we document our own history. Those other publications that are out there are not out there documenting all of our history.
Well, it actually starts with my husband, Robert James, and his interest in establishing a newspaper in Savannah, Georgia.
Well, when I moved to Savannah, along with my wife and infant child, Robert James II, every time I asked a historical question, somehow the name Savannah Tribune would come up.
Every week, not only did the Savannah Evening Press and the Savannah Morning News come to our house, every week the Tribune came. It was the voice of Black Savannah. That's the only way you found out what was going on with Black people in Savannah.
Growing up, I fancied myself as a poet. And when I went to college, I told my mother, she says, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to be a poet. And the first publication that accepted me as a poet was the Savannah Tribune.
Bob James had a dream. He had a vision. His objective was to groom me, teach me, mold me, and bring out of me what was inside.
When we came here, that paper was not being published. During that period of time in the 1960s, probably up until he reestablished the paper in 1973, several African American newspapers throughout the country experienced challenges. Several of them had to close shop.
The notion of reviving this old journal in Savannah just came to the forefront. And
knowing too that the founder of Carver State Bank, Louis B. Toomer, also affiliating the fact that Louis B. Toomer's father was one of the founders of the original Savannah Tribune, which was founded in 1875. So just all of that, probably interested him, but then it also was fascinating to me.
For me, it's important because I'm a part of it. Back in the day, the paper was it. You may see some television, but for local news, you went to the newspaper, and the Savannah Tribune specifically.
I had a full-time job at Carver State Bank, and so in the evenings, when I would leave work, I would go by the space that we had rented to start the Savannah Tribune. 3, 4, 5 hours, we would be in there to 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, laying out the newspaper, especially on that last day before it was time to send it to press.
I became a person that I never knew I could be. I would have to drive the old Savannah Tribune station wagon all the way to the Piggly Wiggly in Vidalia, wait for them to print the paper, which took hours, and bring the newspaper back to the Savannah Tribune.
Being an African-American paper, everybody didn't want our voices heard. So it was difficult in finding somebody to print the paper.
I didn't have a lot of hands-on experience. Now I would observe, because I would go sometimes on Lincoln Street and see them putting this paper together, you know, this little, cutting these strips, these columns, and making sure that the columns fit this way and that way.
If it had not been for people in the history of the Savannah Tribune, like Deborah McIntosh Vassiana, that we would never be able to claim that we have never missed a publication date.
I tell people, there are only two people in Savannah that I know of who have read all the Tribune from 1875 to 1960, maybe twice. That's Reverend Father Charles Hoskins and myself.
But when I became publisher in '83, since I was working with students at Savannah State University and just, you know, knowing what they did, especially those that I would come across who were working on the Tiger's Roar, the newspaper, or they were working with the yearbook. So as I became acquainted with some of these students and I would notice what they were doing, I would say, well, wouldn't you like to maybe get a little bit of experience and work at the Savannah Tribune?
The reason that those individuals started the Savannah Tribune in 1875 was to have a voice so that they could talk to their to the black people in the community and give them news and inspire them, and that has not changed a bit. In fact, it is far more important today than it could have possibly have been then.
And I began to get a look at how the Tribune was strident and vociferous in its defense of black rights.
But still, the emphasis was always on looking at equality, justice, economic opportunity, civil rights, giving directions and information about how to vote. You know, why is it important to vote? Why is it important that you are engaged, you know, in your community?
Robert and Shirley James did something that will put them in the pantheon of African American heroes, period. They will belong with Saul C. Johnson and John Deveaux and Louis Pleasant. Yes, they will. Because in 1973, after a 13-year hiatus, they reconfigured and restarted the Savannah Tribune.
I said to myself, I need to embrace this and see what I can do now that I'm retired from a full-time job. What can I do? And that was the passion. That was one of the passions that led me into getting involved with voter engagement and voter education. And the Tribune was definitely still going back to its original mission, what it had always been doing all along. Then we needed to enhance and do more.
They have stayed true to the mission that was started by John Deveaux. All you have to do every election, read the Savannah Tribune. If it were not for the Savannah Tribune, I could not have written that book. I could not have written a book on Richard Wright at GSIC, 1891-1921, without the Tribune. I could not have written the history of First Bryan Baptist Church without the Tribune. The history of Butler Memorial Presbyterian Church without the Tribune. You get my drift?
Their actions were brave and bold, the response profound, and even still is today. Thank you to the original founders, John H. Deveaux, Louis B. Toomer Sr., and Louis Pleasant. And thank you to the publishers, Saul C. Johnson, 1889 to 1954, former female publisher Willa Ayers Johnson, 1954 to 1960, Robert E. James, 1973 to 1983, and the current female publisher and wife of Robert James, Shirley B. James.